Welcome to Happy Talks with Dr. Alice and Donovan. Dr. Alice Fong is a holistic naturopathic doctor and founder of Amor de Soi Wellness. And Donovan Jensen is a software engineer and founder of HowToHappy.com. Together, they're out to cause more happiness in the world.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Happy Talks. My name is Dr. Alice, and this is my awesome co-host, Donovan. And today we are going to be talking about trust. Trust is so important for relationships and in life. So, Donovan, kick us off. What are your initial thoughts when it comes to trust?
Yeah, so first couple things that come to mind are around sort of this idea of trust as kind of individualized, right? There are certain people who trust more or less depending on sort of the life circumstances they've had. And I guess that's just for sort of initial context, right? Like as you actually get to know someone or even a business or some other entity, right? Then you can sort of scale your trust up and down. But I think where I want to start is sort of this idea that some people are more trusting than others, and maybe some of the components as to why that's actually the case. But I'd be curious what your initial thoughts are.
Yeah, initially I was associating trust with relationships and my trust of people depending on my interactions with them, what they've done to be trustworthy or not trustworthy. It's built over time, or if they've broken my trust, what it takes to like build the trust again. But then another thing occurred to me as far as the area of trust, in that like the difference between me and my partner is that he definitely has more anxiety than me. Although I think I've done a lot for myself to overcome my own anxieties in life. But he tends to like want to control life more in how it goes and have all the details dialed into a T, where I feel like I'm more of a person that trusts that life is going to work out. You know, I'm going to do what I can, but I don't feel like I have to dial in every single detail of my life to have it go the way that I want it to go. I just have like an inherent trust that life is going to work out. So I think that's a different area of trust I want to dive into at some point too during this conversation.
Yeah, that's a really interesting distinction, sort of trust of individuals or entities, or trust in, it goes to the same idea of like trusting in the process, or just like trusting in life, right? Like sort of that kind of idea. So let's start with sort of the more social component or the more individualized component, and then we'll move into the, I don't even know what to call the other half, the vague trusting in
trust.
Trusting in the world, in the universe. So I think I'll start with, like I feel like I find myself as a relatively trusting person, right? Yeah. Most of the time, even if I don't know someone and they say they're going to do something, I just sort of expect that they will do it because I trust them and give people the benefit of the doubt. It's really interesting to me to see other people who don't do things like that, right? Where trust is not sort of the baseline, but it's something that's earned right from the get-go. Whereas for me, I feel like it's sort of the opposite, where it's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to trust you until you prove to me that you are untrustworthy.
Right.
So I'd be curious what some of your thoughts are around sort of that dichotomy.
I would agree that I'm similar to you in that I generally trust most people. Not everyone, I say. Maybe it kind of like you get vibes off certain people and you're like, I don't know if I trust this people, or maybe you hear things about certain people being unreliable, so you don't trust them as much, which is kind of unfair in a way because you haven't maybe interacted with them directly. But I think for the most part, I do trust people in that when they give their word. But then when that is broken, then I'm very upset. I'm very upset when the trust is broken, because I also define myself as a very trustworthy, reliable person that you can count on. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do something. For example, we recently are doing some like home projects, and we hired a contractor to like build a wall. And he was very, we were very happy with him initially, because a lot of the contractors we were like exploring to potentially, or interviewing, I guess, to hire, were ridiculously flaky and not communicative, or they say they'd come on this day and then like ghost us and wouldn't even say anything. And we're like, are you coming? Are you like that? So when we finally got someone to say like, oh, I'm coming on this day and at this time I'll show up. And he did. It was just really exciting for us initially. And he built like half the wall. He built out the frame. And then he was like, okay, I'm going to come back on Monday at 8 a.m. He texts like the night before and says, oh, actually, I'm trying to wrap up this other project. So can we move it to Tuesday at 8 a.m.? And I'm like, yeah, no problem. I get it. Life happens. I appreciate that he texted to communicate, to say that, like, instead of just not showing up on Monday morning. But Tuesday morning comes around, 8 a.m. I'm waiting for him. And I was like, okay, are you on your way? Like, what's your ETA? Because it's around 8 a.m. And he's like, oh, actually, the person I'm working with is not going to be able to show up until 10 a.m. So we'll be there at like 10 a.m. And I was like, and we'll just text you when we're on your way. 12 o'clock, nothing, no communication whatsoever. I text him again around noon, and then I text him again around 5. No communication, completely ghosted like all the other contractors. And I was so disappointed and disheartened. And that was even worse when he had gained my trust and then completely broken it thereafter, and was like all these other contractors that ghost me. So yeah, that might have been a tangent, but like sharing that story because it clearly I'm worked up about it still.
So you guys just stuck with like a permanent half a wall?
Yes, now we have to hire someone else to finish the job, or we have to do it ourselves. And we're like, yeah.
But I think that highlights something that's really important, at least for my journey, in terms of how to think about trust or sort of like use the concept effectively, which is the depth of the trust, the importance of the thing around which I need to trust someone matters a lot for what I'm going to trust them with. Right. Because I said like, oh yeah, you know what? I generally trust people, but you know what? That's not true when it comes to spending a lot of money. Like if I'm about to spend $10,000 on something, like I definitely don't trust people out the gate about what they say, because it's something that's of value to me. And it's the same thing. I imagine, like, you know, if I was out somewhere taking care of one of my younger siblings and it's like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom, like I'm not going to just trust them to get watched by a stranger. Like that's not something that I'm going to trust.
Like,
so
hey, you look trustworthy. You watch this kid for a minute.
It's gonna have to be a real bad emergency for that to come up.
Yeah.
But I think that sort of goes to something that's useful, at least, or has been useful for me in terms of thinking about trust. And I do default to trusting people when the stakes are low, even if they haven't shown me anything. Right. So, you know, if the cashier says that they are going to put something in the back to hold it for me, you know, like some item that I want to buy. Cool. Fine. I'm going to trust that because it's not that important.
Right. Yeah.
But I feel like as larger and larger things come up, then more and more trust needs to be built. And I know for a fact that's not always the case for people. Right. You hear people like getting scammed and stuff where it's just like, oh, I just trusted that if I sent this person $3,000, they would send me back $5,000. And it's like, you know them? Have you ever met them? Do you know anything about this person?
Yeah.
So your example kind of helped unlock for me this concept, this sort of like parallel relationship between increased trust and increased responsibility. And it's just like, the more I know about someone, the more that they've demonstrated to me that I can trust them, the larger things that I am willing to trust them with. And that doesn't always work out. You know, sometimes I've still gotten burned, but for the most part, that model seems to be more useful than sort of other ones that I've tried in the past or seen other people use, which is like, don't trust anyone ever, no matter what, or always trust everyone, you know, sort of this like black and white type of thinking.
Right. Yeah. Kind of there is this in between, and it really depends, because we were so excited that he was very communicative at first. We're like, oh, maybe we finally found a reliable contractor to like we have a lot of other projects that we were hoping, like, if he was reliable, we could hire him for. But now it's like, maybe not so much. But yeah, I don't think I would ever pay any contractor the whole amount up front, because that I don't trust anyone. It's like I feel like I could just easily lose that money. But it's more reasonable to, pay half up front, pay the rest when you finish the job. So you'd assume you'd like, yay, you can get the other half when he finishes the job, but he will not. So you have to find someone else.
On that note,
when it comes to money, though, like just to wrap up my thought, it's just like I think when it comes to money, I'm a little more hesitant, especially, kind of what you were saying, when the stakes are high. When it's more money, I'm like, ooh, let's be extra diligent and careful, because I have been scammed or cheated before in the past. So I'm a little more like, but if it's something like, oh yeah, hold my item at Target, that's like, I can buy another one if they don't put it there. Yeah, it's not a big deal. Yeah.
It's also, to me, I don't know about your experience, but an extreme red flag when you are looking for some sort of middle ground approach. Like you were saying, like, I'll give you half now and then the other half when it's done. And the person is like, no, I'm not willing to do a partial deal or move, maybe, sure. If you've worked with them like 50 times and them, and they're like, no, I need the money up front so that I can pay off this other bill, whatever. Right. Like if you have established trust. But for me, it's a huge red flag when you're sort of trying to build trust and look for some sort of middle ground between what the two of you are looking for, right? Like you were talking about, and they are not willing to accept it, or they push really hard for putting you in a position where you're vulnerable. It hasn't always worked out poorly for me, but the times that I have accepted those sorts of situations, it has worked out poorly for me far more than any other sort of position. So I just want to flag that when I see or feel like, especially when I feel this sort of like pressure to do something, that makes me really, really not want to trust someone and shut down.
Yeah, absolutely. But kind of steering gears from, like, I feel like we've kind of focused a bit on the losses of finances when you're too trustworthy or trusting of someone. But I kind of wanted to go towards relationships, in that, I have been in a relationship where, or actually, I mean, there have been like small breaks in trust, like, oh, he didn't do the thing, like a chore that he said he was going to do because he forgot. Okay, minor things, versus like, oh, full on someone cheating on me, kind of breaking that kind of trust. So I'd like to dive in that a little bit. And, can someone, like, let's, for example, for me, because I was young and I was naive and I was ignoring a lot of the red flags and just being trusting of everyone, like, being monogamous when we agreed to be monogamous. Where I think I've learned, and I do feel like, even though I had been cheated on at a early age, I was in my early 20s, I did have, like, I don't think that prevented me from trusting other people, like in relationships. I was still able to, and I honestly believe that I think I set a higher standard for myself of like zero tolerance. If that happens, it's over, kind of a thing. And I honestly believe I've never dated anyone that has cheated on me since then. But I think it shifted my who I seek out. It can't just be, oh, they're cute. That's not one of the qualities that's nice, but it's like trustworthy is one of the qualities I seek out now. As well as, being reliable, being kind, it just, from that experience, it kind of made it a quality that was really something I highly valued.
Yeah, I have had a very different experience, which is to say that I was also in relationships where I got cheated on, and that very much colored my future relationships. I was at least cognizant of the fact that it's unfair to judge people who are not, judge people in your future based on how other different people acted in the past.
Right.
But I know, like, it was so difficult for me to trust things, because in my earlier relationships, like, yes, there was just straight up lying, but there was also instances of sort of people putting themselves in situations that for them, they were not able to like continue to uphold the agreements we have for our relationship. Whereas that might not be true for everyone, right? So to make things a little more tangible, I've been talking really generically, but like this person would spend a lot of time by themselves with guy friends. And for them, that was not a good situation for them to be able to uphold the agreement that we had. Other people I dated since then, completely fine. Like 100% completely fine and fine for them to do that. So it was difficult for me, very difficult for me to develop trust for the new person, even though that's the old person who made that mistake, right? And but I knew I was at least cognizant of like, okay, but being the type of boyfriend that doesn't allow your girlfriend to have any male friends is like, that's unhealthy, and I know that's unhealthy. So like you know, I at least knew enough of the pieces to like know that all the negative feelings and fear and stuff that I had were things that I had to work through and deal with. But absolutely that colored all my relationships moving forward up until, you know, the one that I've been in for the past 4 years or whatever. Like still had at the start of this relationship, I still had those same feelings and I still had those same problems. Now, you know, we've been able to, after being together for so long, build up enough trust that I no longer have that. I no longer worry about those kinds of things. I'm no longer impacted by it as much. But absolutely, like I was worried about it the whole time for everyone ever since then.
Wow, I feel very fortunate that I didn't worry if people would cheat on me. Because I think I set like, I mean, I haven't had like perfect relationships for sure. I mean, there were moments where I felt like I wasn't treated well, but not to such a terrible degree as cheating. But I do appreciate that I didn't have the fear of cheating. And I don't know what it is. Maybe it's kind of goes back and ties into the conversation we'll have a little bit later, in that I trust life kind of working out more. I don't know how it is or why I'm like this, but I feel grateful for the fact that I didn't let that one bad experience color me and ruin or not necessarily ruin, but just like make it harder on future relationships that I had. I do have to appreciate, though, the next relationship I went into after that cheater was actually someone who was just so nice and kind that I had 100% full trust in him. And I think that helped me just have trust in the other relationships thereafter. So that was probably because I think I was like, okay, I got to go in the complete opposite. I want the complete opposite kind of guy. I want a nice, kind, good person. It's like my thing that I really needed. And so that's what I sought out in a way. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I, again, had sort of the opposite experience where I had the rug pulled out from me completely multiple times.
Yeah.
So then it was really, you know, that last one, the last instance I'm thinking of out of like 2 or 3 in a row was a much longer relationship. And so I felt like I had already built trust back up, and then to find myself in sort of the same pattern after, you know, a year or whatever, I don't remember the timelines, but whatever amount of time, I was just like, wow, like, I don't know that I really can trust anyone. Now, in retrospect, now that I'm a grown man and then can break things down a little bit better, there's a lot of like weird stuff going on there, a lot of warning signs, a lot of just things that I would be able to pick up on now.
Right. Yeah.
But at the time, and having had that pattern happen to me multiple times, it really limited my trust. So I'm really grateful that I at least had in my head somewhere that like, you will never have a healthy relationship if you can't get past some of these other things.
Right.
But I think it's the same sort of pattern that develops for people who become very untrusting of just like other types of relationships or other situations, right? Where it's like, you know, if you need to hire a contractor and you get 5 in a row that are varying levels of, hey, no, I'm going to be here. Hey, no, I'm not. Hey, I'm here. No, I'm not. Yeah, I am. Like,
yeah.
That set of patterns are just like getting a batch of people in a row that are untrustworthy or break your trust in some way can make it really hard moving forward to be like, okay, this next person, I'm going to give them a chance, even though realistically that's probably the best way to operate, right? You have to treat each individual in each circumstance on its own merit and not let the past color things for you, except for, like I was saying, like learning red flags, learning information, like as you get it from people that can help you sort of determine if someone's trustworthy or not, but not doing what I was struggling so hard against, which is sort of determining someone's trustworthiness, not based on evidence or flags or anything, but solely based on past experience.
Yeah, absolutely. So what helped you kind of, it was great that you were self-aware enough to recognize that, the issue was on you, not like, because in a new relationship and learning and developing yourself. So what helped you develop trust in future partners after those incidents? Because I only had the one and done. I didn't have like the series, and who knows, I could have been a different person if I had the series, because now that I think about it, I don't trust contractors anymore because I've had like a series of them. And maybe if I had a series of cheaters, it would have been different. Who knows?
Yeah, so a couple pieces helped me. One was I developed better strategies around sort of seeing things that were potentially problematic or heading off certain situations or communicating about certain situations that made me feel uncomfortable or comfortable or whatever else, and looking for sort of middle grounds based on my trust level. Now, that's not the healthiest thing, right? Like there were times that I was like, I don't feel comfortable with this. Can we try to like find some sort of middle ground? I know it's my problem, but I need help here. So that was part of it. And that's not, that was sort of a sacrifice on my partner's part or some sort of like negotiation there that in a healthy, ideal place did not need to exist. So part of it was that. Part of it was also gaining enough experiences that were not that, right? Enough instances of, okay, like, my person's going out and they're going to be drinking and I'm not 100% sure like what the group that they're with is or whatever else, and having those really uncomfortable feelings, and then just like things going fine, and then just really consciously being like, okay, so all those extra feelings and all that stuff is fear from the last relationship. But this new relationship is giving me another piece of evidence that it's fine, things are okay, like that things are going to continue on the path and by the agreements that we both set out. So those are sort of the three main ones, right? I got much better at seeing like, what is this behavior early, right? Like before I was way super invested and just seeing this behavior and being like, what is this? Let's talk about this. Two was, even though it's not super fair, having some like negotiations with sort of people in the new relationships with things I was comfortable or uncomfortable with. And then three, just like working through those feelings and allowing the new information to start overriding some of the old stuff, because there were also times in that period where I didn't. Where we're like, yeah, sure, this time nothing happened, but ... right? When I was really worked up and really in it.
Yeah.
So it took a lot of time and a lot of positive instances to sort of work out of that.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense to be trained to realize that, oh no, just because she goes out with people doesn't mean she's going to cheat on you.
Right.
Yeah, but I feel for people that aren't able to do like the steps that you have done to be able to do that, because if you have that constant mistrust in a relationship, I feel like that's a recipe for disaster, because if there's no trust, I feel like that is like one of the core foundational pieces of any relationship. So if that's missing or not as strong as it could be, then it could really potentially damage the relationship.
Yeah, and speaking of broken trust, maybe we could talk about that a little bit. But I have not really had any instances where someone broke my trust in a strong way in terms of an actual act instead of an omission, right? Like you forget to do something that you promise you're going to do. That's
right.
Sort of different. But an actual like intentional act, right? Like lying about something important or whatever else,
right?
That I've never had anyone be able to regain that trust.
Mhm.
And for me, all the times that I've put, my trust back out there, it's just been broken multiple times.
Mhm.
So I'm sure that's not the case. I'm sure there are instances somewhere in the world that someone breaks someone's trust and then is trustworthy from then on. But
Right.
I'd be curious about your experience.
I'd say, just using my current relationship as an example, my partner has never lied or cheated. Well, maybe like white lie. I don't think like major lies, but he's done things that are not nice or not like necessarily I'd consider with his communication. Maybe he was like mean, or he did something that just was like not cool. And it wasn't a lie or wasn't a cheat. So it wasn't like breaking the non-negotiables for me, but it was still something that was hurtful for the relationship. And so for me, it was like, okay, for you to like regain and heal the relationship, and for me to trust that you're committed to the relationship, I'm going to need you to do, like, I was very specific, like, I think just from my own experiences, like, I need for you to like have me be okay with you again in this relationship. I need you to do, like, I need you to read this personal development book. I need you to like write a letter to your younger child to heal. I need you to go see the therapist for X amount of sessions. And then we'll see where we're at, kind of a thing. So for me, it was like, you need to take certain actions. And if you don't, then I don't know if you're really as invested in this relationship as you are saying you are. So that is and he took those actions. So that regained the trust, even though, sometimes I don't want to let our past color our future, be like, oh, I can't count on him for this because he's like, like that. But because I know me having the past color our present when he's taken action to better himself and to better our relationship, shows to me that he's in it. And yes, he's not perfect. He F's up sometimes, but we're both in it and committed to working through those challenging times. So I don't know if that makes sense as far as like the trust topic that we're discussing.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense in terms of trust solely through words is not very strong, right? Like,
Yeah.
The more actions that you actually seen out of the person that align with sort of the trust that you've placed in them, weigh or should weigh much heavier than whatever they say they're going to do. Or at least in my experience, that has become a very important thing for me to rely on, right? Like, people say all kinds of things.
Right.
And especially when there's like conflict, right? And this may be romantic relationship or just a general relationship, especially when there's conflict, a lot of people like to say things that sound nice to try to smooth things over.
Right.
And there's a big difference. We've talked about this before, but there's a big difference between seeing someone actually make an effort and seeing someone just pay lip service and just say like, oh yeah, I'm going to do better. I'm going to do this and do that. And it's like,
yeah,
the sentiment is nice, but if you don't see the action paired with that,
right,
then you really need to beware, because the times that I got my trust burned over and over and over and over is when I didn't listen to the actions. I was listening to the words and only the words. And it's like, okay, well, next time they're probably going to do better. Okay, this is the 5th time. Okay, the 7th time. Like, things are not changing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It makes a difference. And I think that is a really big determinant when it comes to trust of a person. It's not what they say, it's what they do. And are they taking the actions to build the trust or to rebuild the trust if it has been broken? So that's key. But let's shift gears, because there is the one aspect of trust we haven't covered yet, of trusting in the process, trusting in life or the universe, I guess. For me, I think it's in that I don't feel like, even though I've had bad things happen to me, like I've been cheated on, I've had all sorts of things, I don't think anything has been so incredibly terrible for me to have me not trust that life is going to work out. in that, I think it balances. I go through phases where life is really challenging and hard. And sometimes it's like one after another and after another. But I have the trust that, it's not always going to be like this. Things are going to turn around eventually. So I have to be patient, and it will happen. And so that helps me through those darker periods of life. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I was able to get a lot more trust. I used to feel kind of like you were talking about with your partner before, a very strong need for control around as many aspects as I could possibly have.
Yeah.
And that faded away more and more as I started to recognize that no matter how much energy or effort I pour into things, there's only a certain amount that it will impact the outcomes of things.
Right.
And for me, basically, a lot of the time was spent sort of worrying or trying to control things that were out of my control when there was no useful sort of piece to be pulled from there. So it goes back to, again, sort of how big the sort of thing is that I need to trust and how much effort I'm willing to put into it. So one example for me is like, if I park somewhere knowing or feeling comfortable, trusting that my car is not going to get broken into. Well, there are some pieces that I do have control over, right? And I do take the actions around that, especially when it's, stuff that I can do right away. Like, okay, there's, I don't know, a fancy jacket in my car. Okay, I need to put that in the trunk. I need to, move some stuff around, whatever else. I need to make sure I actually lock the doors. And also, depending on the area, like, okay, are there different options for parking? Great, I'm going to park in whatever place seems the best.
Right.
But I'm also just trusting that it's not going to happen. And the back end of it, knowing that if it does happen, that I can handle it, I think is another piece that helps a lot to get rid of some of that control and trust more. Is like, okay, I'm going to do the things that I can do. The world's going to do whatever it does. And I'm confident that I will be able to figure out whatever comes at me. And I think that last piece is the part that I really developed over the last, however many years, that helped me let go a lot, because knowing that I can handle things frees me up around just like, well, I'm going to do my best, but whatever the world does, I'll just figure it out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we can plan things to a T, but life throws you curveballs, and and I have the trust that, I'll be able to handle it. I've had a lot of curveballs thrown at me in life, and I've somehow made it this far. I think I'll keep making it, I guess, in a way. But yeah, using the car being broken into example, that's a good one. I immediately thought of San Francisco, and I do not trust my car anywhere in San Francisco. No. I have had my window broken, and it's like you could even do all the things of like leaving your car empty. And I did make the mistake of, I have a Prius where you have like the little shield where you pull over on the trunk so nobody can see it. You got to leave that open and have a completely empty trunk. But even then, sometimes you could still get broken into when it's San Francisco. But in Sacramento, though, I have more trust in the city. So I have nothing valuable, but I do have a few random things like a blanket and some shoes in my trunk, which I don't think anyone would want. So I trust that it's not going to be broken into. That's a good example. But I think, thinking more seriously, in that, like maybe using my business, for example, I don't know if my business is ever going to be a huge success. Like I'm working on it. I know it's going to be hard. It has its ups and downs. And when it's in a down, it's just really frustrating, because it's like, okay, I need to get back in and up again. But sometimes I also, even if my business isn't a success, I have trust in myself that I will still be able to provide for myself and my family, because I know how to work. If I have to be a waitress or an Uber driver, I will do that. It's not the funnest thing, but I will be willing to do that to provide for my family, because I have trust in myself and my skill set to know that I can continue to provide, even if it's not like the ideal way that I would hope for and plan for. But, of course, I'm going to continue to strive to achieve a successful business. But, maybe the cards don't work out that way. Who knows?
Yeah, and I think that's actually what allows, it's this exact same thing that allows me to trust in sort of life and the process and stuff is that I do have a vision of how I would like things to turn out,
Right.
but I'm not so coupled to that to think that that's the only good possible life for me, or the only like successful functional life for me, right? Like
Yeah.
when I think about what the 10 years ago version of me would have thought that I was doing now,
Mm-hmm.
there's no aspect of my life that is recognizable, I don't think.
Yeah.
So to think that I have to hold, and my life is much better than it was at that point.
Mhm.
So to think that I have to hold on to any like particular vision,
Mm-hmm.
I just know through lived experience that that's not going to serve me well.
Right.
So that is another piece that allows me to sort of trust in the process, is just like, there are enough options in life. There is enough paths
Mm-hmm.
that I am confident, going back to what you were saying, that like I trust myself enough to know that I can figure out one that's gonna work out and be fine.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know. I mean, there's an ideal path, and then there's the path that we end up on, and it might not line up or match ideally. It kind of makes me think back of, my last long-term relationship of 3.5, almost 4 years. And I thought I'd spend the rest of my life with him. But looking back, I was thankful in that, I wasn't absolutely, I mean, yes, it was devastating and heartbreaking when we broke up, but I did have, what helped me through the breakup was having trust that, this is for the best for both of us. And, I will find a partner that is more in line with what it is that I want out of life. And I did eventually find that partner, and now we're married and we're building our life together and our family. And, it all worked out, even though like in that incident, breaking off a long-term relationship like that wasn't great. It wasn't fun, but having the trust to know that life is going to work out. And, I'm not following the path that I envisioned for ourselves, but it's still going to work out somehow. So that helped.
Yeah. I just, like you were saying, like, yes, you may have envisioned one path, but I feel like that's the cause of a lot of unhappiness for a lot of people.
True.
And it probably increases more year over year, at least it has for me, is just hearing people talk about like, oh, I should have done this. I wish I did that. I always saw my life turning out this way, instead of being open and accepting to what their life actually is and focusing on the nice parts that actually have come into fruition. So I feel like when you are able to align your mindset more that way, it allows you to trust more, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, this wasn't the path that I picked, but it's still good. Like,
Yeah.
or at least has good aspects. I mean, at any point in life, there's pros and cons, but
Right. Yeah. It just makes me think of, maybe people who think that they're going to be like a sports star or NFL player or something, and then they get an injury, and then that's not the path for them, obviously, because of that. But they find success in other areas, or even when they are a successful athlete and their career is over, it's like, okay, well, there's other things that you can do and learn and develop yourself and contribute to the world. So very good points. I think we covered this topic pretty well. Is there anything else you wanted to add, Donovan?
I think that about covers it. Just, I found a lot of use in this sort of framework around trusting the amount that's appropriate for whatever the item is, as well as really paying attention to actions over just words.
Right. Absolutely.
Those are my two biggest takeaways.
Yes, I concur with that it varies depending on actions and yeah, the cost or the risk value, I guess, of the thing that we're looking at. So, all right, thank you everyone for tuning in. If you want to share your story about trust or when your trust has been broken, you can type that into the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, all the things that help spread happiness in the world. And we will see you next time. Bye, guys.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please take a second to subscribe, as it really helps out a lot. If you're looking for more content, there's all sorts of information over at howtohappy.com. And if you want something a little bit more condensed and concise, I've also written the book Mindscaping, which is essentially a framework for optimizing happiness. So we'll have the link there as well. And that's all I've got. Thanks again. I'll see you next time.